The night was eerily silent as a group of surviving soldiers gathered in a hidden clearing under a dark, starless sky. They worked in tense silence, burying the cursed artifacts they had stolen under the orders of Admiral Pedro de Cabrera. Their faces were shadowed with fear, beads of sweat glistening in the faint light of their lanterns as they laid the treasures to rest. Each gold piece, each gem, each ancient mask seemed to whisper its own dark warning, but the men pressed on, desperate to rid themselves of the curse that had haunted their every step. Just as they laid the last piece into the ground and turned to go, the wind died abruptly, leaving an unnatural stillness in the clearing. Shadows seemed to thicken, twisting and coiling around them as if something long buried had awakened. One soldier, his voice trembling, whispered, "Do you feel that?" But before his companion could answer, an invisible force gripped the air around them, chilling them to the core. It was as if unseen eyes were watching, waiting, angry that the treasure had been disturbed. Then, without warning, a low, unearthly whisper began to echo from the shadows, chanting in a language none of them could understand. The men turned to flee, but it was too late. Within moments, their lanterns flickered and died, leaving them in utter darkness. The next morning, when a search party found the clearing, there was no trace of the soldiers, only the faint outline of the cursed symbols etched into the ground, as if by ghostly hands. Some say the curse was finally satisfied that night. Others insist that the treasure is still out there, lying in wait, bringing doom upon all who dare disturb it. This is the story of the curse of the St. Augustine treasure. The curse of the St. Augustine treasure began long before the Spanish arrived on the Florida shores. Legends speak of a powerful artifact belonging to a long-lost tribe. Passed down through generations, this artifact was believed to hold protective spirits that watched over the land. For centuries, the tribe had safeguarded it, but with the arrival of European explorers, things changed. The artifact and the vast wealth surrounding it caught the attention of those who saw it as nothing more than loot to seize. In 1565, when Admiral Pedro de Cabrera's men raided the coast, they had no idea they were trespassing upon sacred grounds. Commanded to bring back anything of value, the Spanish soldiers invaded villages, plundering relics, golden ornaments, and gemstones from the tribe's hidden shrines. Among the treasures was a strange, intricate idol made of stone and metal. The artifact, though simple in appearance, had been central to the tribe's spiritual practices. Taking it away was an act of desecration, and it's said that as the idol was lifted from its resting place, a warning was uttered by the tribe's elders, a warning that echoed the haunting fate that awaited the treasure's takers. Admiral Cabrera was a seasoned commander, accustomed to following royal orders, but the curse began to make him question his mission. Soon after taking the artifacts, his men started to whisper of strange occurrences, ominous shadows creeping near the campfire, disembodied whispers in the dark, and a constant feeling of being watched. Even the weather turned against them, with violent storms rolling in unexpectedly, trapping them on shore. Ignoring his men's fears, Cabrera ordered them to march forward with the treasure, dismissing their tales as superstition. But within days, their ranks were struck by sickness and violent dreams, and fear grew among them. Men began to disappear, lost in the dark swamps, or found staring into space as though they had seen something beyond human comprehension. The Admiral himself grew haunted, yet refused to believe the legends of a curse. At night he was plagued by visions of ghostly figures and whispers promising ruin. His obsession with keeping the treasures led him to drive his soldiers harder, desperate to return to Spain with what he believed would be his greatest victory. As the men pressed on, sickness spread through the ranks, weakening their forces. Supplies ran low, and morale was all but gone. Men who once followed Cabrera's orders without question now muttered among themselves, doubting his leadership. But each time one of them tried to leave, they would find themselves lost in the unforgiving landscape, only to return hollow-eyed and shaken. It was as if the land itself would not let them go. Desperate, Cabrera pushed them through an endless march. By day they slogged through thick mud and dense forest, and by night they lay awake, haunted by the same unearthly voices. Some claimed to hear chanting in languages they did not recognize. Others felt a cold breath against their skin as they tried to sleep. The treasure seemed to weigh heavier each day, and eventually even Cabrera himself began to falter under its influence. One by one, the men began to fall. Some to illness, others to mysterious accidents. Yet the admiral refused to abandon his prize. His fixation drove him to the brink, and soon he found himself alone, clutching the cursed artifacts, staring into the empty forest, waiting for salvation that would never come. Realizing that no one would survive if they continued on, Cabrera gave the order to bury the treasure. The few remaining soldiers, hollowed by fear and exhaustion, obeyed without question, desperate to rid themselves of their cursed haul. In the dead of night, they gathered in a secluded clearing where the ground seemed to hum with a life of its own. As they began to dig, strange occurrences heightened their terror. The earth felt unnaturally cold, and whispers filled the air, as though the spirits of the land watched them, condemning each shovel of soil they unearthed. Each piece of treasure laid in the ground seemed to pulse, as though it was alive, and the men felt a weight lift off their shoulders with each piece they let go. Yet as they placed the final artifact, a small idol adorned with strange markings, into the pit, the clearing was overcome by an unnatural chill. They turned to leave, but the shadows around them seemed to close in, thickening, tightening like a trap. The soldiers froze, glancing around in terror as a cold breeze carried the sound of distant chanting growing louder. In a panic, they fled, abandoning the half-buried pit in the forest, but they never made it far. The following morning, searchers found nothing but scattered belongings and half-dug soil. No bodies, no trace of the soldiers, and only the faintest whisper of that night's horror etched into the earth. Over the years, tales of the St. Augustine treasure persisted, and whispers of its cursed nature continued to haunt the region. Occasional explorers and treasure hunters would arrive, driven by the lure of gold and the promise of forgotten riches, only to vanish without a trace or to return haunted, their minds shattered by what they had seen or believed they had seen. Locals claimed that at night, strange lights could be seen flickering deep in the woods near where the treasure was believed to be buried, and whispers of chanting could sometimes be heard on the wind. The story of the cursed treasure grew, becoming one of Florida's most haunting legends, with each new disappearance adding fuel to the belief that the curse was very real. In the end, no one could say what truly became of Admiral Cabrera's treasure, or of the men who had dared to disturb it. But one thing was certain: the land had claimed what was rightfully its own, and those who sought to take from it paid the ultimate price. To this day, the curse of the St. Augustine treasure remains an eerie reminder of the dangers of disturbing forces that lie beyond human understanding.